Let's put a new coat of paint on that lonesome old town. Set 'em up, we'll be knocking 'em down. You wear a dress, baby, I'll wear a tie. We'll laugh at that old bloodshot moon in that burgundy sky. But what if I could sing? You know who can sing? Tom Waits, y'all. So at some point in time, I'm really excited to compare a singer and a powerful singer like Tom Waits, harmonics in the timbre of their voice to the harmonics that show to be strong in their natal chart. Comparing actual musical harmonics with astrological harmonics, it feels to me like this should show some kind of correlation. And by the way, if it does, that would be a really cool, like, scientific expression of the powers of astrology. But that's for another time. I got to figure out how to work with a spectrum analyzer. Like, for now, I'm going to work with a spectrum analyzer called Astrology Charts. Hey, just so I can make sure that this thing is on, if you're here live, will you please give the video a like? Can I see that's working? Or even more interestingly, write a comment, say hello, say where you're coming from. Maybe talk about angular planets in your chart if you have them, like Tom Waits certainly does. So let's begin there with Tom Waits, and I'm going to show you how it's going to soon after lead us to the 13th harmonic of his birth moment. I just want to go online and see where this chart data for Tom Waits comes from. So a thing that we can do to pursue this is just search Tom Waits Astro Data Bank. And that's likely going to lead us to Astrodienst, who now at astro.com hosts the Astro Data Bank, which was started by Louis Rodin so long ago, who created this Rodin rating, which includes like AA, which we have for Tom Waits, which means a birth record in hand. Looks like collected by the great Frank Clifford. Thank you, Frank, for getting the birth record information for the great Tom Waits. Yo, if you're not familiar with Tom Waits, go listen to some wonderful Tom Waits music right now. Go, go, go. Well, if you're here live, maybe go after we spend some time together. If you're not here live and you're watching this at a time that I currently perceive to be the future, I encourage you to pause this and go listen to some Tom Waits music. Let me give you a few more particular assignments. Go listen to Tom Waits play that song that I just butchered at the beginning of this thing, which is called New Coat of Paint, from his wonderful 1975, or was it 76, album called The Heart of Saturday Night. Listen with a heart full of light and love to Blue Valentine by the great Tom Waits. Listen to The Piano Has Been Drinking by the great Tom Waits. And maybe go weird with it into Tom Waits' pirate phase. Oh, Swordfish Trombones would be a song that could bring you there. And I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, listen to Hoist That Rag as well. Go look at the films that Tom Waits has played roles in, and especially go look at interviews of Tom Waits, especially when he was young. I've been doing some of that today to try to get a feel for more of that Tom Waits essence that we might experience beyond just the wonders of his beautiful and powerful music. I'll just say, like, that album, Heart of Saturday Night, saved my life. At least saved my heart in times when it was just broken and struggling. it's a really wonderful album in many, many ways. But for me, along with at that time, Beck's Mutations was really helpful for me to find my own self again at the time when the thing had gotten broken open, you know? So I highly recommend a deep listening to Tom Waits. Let's listen to his natal chart a little bit. I think Tom Waits is a great example of the powers of angular planets. Mercury just about to rise. Mercury maybe having already risen. You don't quite know when planets are right at the angle like that, because they don't travel the sun's path. However, I can say Mercury's beneath the ground just because I know Mercury's south node is in Scorpio, and therefore this means southern latitude, and planets with southern latitude are going to rise later than the degree of the zodiac that they project to. Mercury was about 2 degrees south of the path of the sun when Tom Waits was born. I should say southern latitude planets rise after the degree that they project to in northern hemisphere skies. So I can go over here and just show you that Mercury's altitude at the time of Tom Waits's birth, 1.5 degrees beneath the horizon. Cool. Well, that's very much the first house. Why do we call it the first house? Because in any given moment of time, the stars that are in the first, including the moving stars, planetas, will be first to rise. The stars that are in the 12th, which have just risen to become visible, they will be the last to rise. They have to reach and go rest and root down below before they will rise again. So they'll be 12th to rise in the houses or the sections, the topics of the sky, right? So Mercury, not only in the first, about to rise, and that means angular. And we see that these are very powerful positions. In a sense, they can kind of take over and be in that regard like the victor planet that gets to determine the whole route that a native will take. This can be true, by the way, for any angular planet, whether they're about to rise or about to reach or about to rest in the west or about to root down beneath the ground. Super powerful, especially at the ascendant. And those are going to show up typically when we're young. Traditionally, the ascendant, what's new? Why? Because that's where things rise, right? Like astrology is astronomy, y'all. What's new? So youth, where the midheaven place, more like middle of life, the setting place, later years. The down beneath is the tomb and the womb from which we come to rise again, you see. So there's something very powerful about this Sagittarius Mercury rising when Tom Waits rose. I'm in his chart today because I was tripping on Sagittarius Mercury yesterday and how in the tradition, Mercury was said to be in exile in that sign, so far away from his Gemini home, a stranger in a strange land. And some would say, therefore, like a weak Mercury. Here's a great example of Tom Waits where that's just ridiculous. But I would suggest like kind of a out of the box counterculture Mercury. And for Tom Waits, I think if you'll listen to his music, you will agree that's very much true. Mercury's like in a square with Mars and Saturn, especially Mars, if you just look at the degrees. I mean, Mercury's separating from them. So we'll see like Mercury square Mars, 2 degrees from perfect square. And that S means separating. In other words, been there, done that, about 5 degrees in separation from Saturn. And yet by plates or whole signs, this can be a tricky thing, especially in a daytime chart with Mars. That Mars, we say, is overcoming Mercury, or Virgo overcomes Sagittarius. It rises first and it's on the square. So that's a kind of a tricky square, like, but you know, squares are tension for the sake of release. a square and a trine, if we kind of map the aspects chromatically, which I do because it really makes sense. But we're also going to talk a bit about harmonics today. I want to explore Tom Waits through this strange kind of avant-garde science of astrology that I'm currently obsessed with called harmonics. Before I do, let me just look at the chart from a more traditional view. Strong moon in Cancer at home, but at the side of this weirdo, Uranus, who I just call Dr. Strange. Mercury again rising in the sign of an exile, right? So there's something different, something strange. I mean, it's a word that you'll often associate with Aquarius. It may be, by the way, because astrology has gone so solar, so like sun sign only, right? And the sun is said to be at home in Leo, and therefore exiled in Aquarius on the opposite side. So perhaps like the weirdness of Aquarius, as it's often described these days, might be a remnant of like giving too much power to the sun as like the only one. Hard to say, but it does seem to agree that Uranus is kind of out there and kind of avant-garde and out of the box and, you know, different type of sign. And so we have strong Aquarius at the time of Tom Waits's becoming, right? And look at the benefics, as they're called, Venus and Jupiter just huddled together in Aquarius in the second house. Depending on how we divide the wheel, the current divisions shown are a Placidus house system. If I do like whole signs, as I always also do because it's the archetypal framework, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius. Aquarius is the third of Sagittarius. Well, Venus, he's an artist. Tom Waits, in my point of view, quite a beautiful man as well. And typically, especially in his like acting roles, well, on the stage in general, very Aquarian, kind of out of the box, different, pioneering, pushing forward. Maybe you hear some more of the Aries there, but Sagittarius as well, right? It's exploring, adventuring, journeying. Yeah. When I see Sagittarius on the rise, right, particularly interested in where Jupiter's living, because Sagittarius is said to be Jupiter's home, Jupiter's sign. And Jupiter is here in Aquarius, right? I'm interested in just looking at other divisions of this Sagittarius sign. It's Saturn's bounds or division and Saturn's face or decan that both host this ascendant at the time of Tom Waits's becoming. Fascinating. Yeah. So Aquarius traditionally is said to be a Saturnian thing. Modern astrology sees it quite as Uranian, right? I would say Aquarius is revolutionary when the rules of the game, being Capricorn, are lame and just need to be completely renewed and broken apart, and a new game should be created, the Great Revolution. But when the games are cool, like, you know, the piano has 12 notes, then just innovate, do it in a new way, right? Like a wonderful thing about music, at least if you're playing with Western harmony, and especially in modern times with equal temperament, like you only have 12 notes. It's the way you put them together, and the rest you use in between that make you you. And Tom Waits is very much Tom Waits and only Tom Waits. You can hear the heritage in his music and his voice. You can hear where he's coming from. You hear that jazz, baby. But wow, what an amazing pioneer, adventurer. So the Sagittarian spirit really feels true. Sagittarius Mercury especially, going into places that none have, and maybe we'd rather you not. Maybe the square of Mercury Mars, of Mercury Saturn, some of the ways of like Oh, the naysayers of traditions telling you you can't go that way. You'll get lost in those places, or who knows. I could see, critics being harsh on Tom Waits at time in his journey. I could also see him giving no Fs. And I love, as much as I see the tension of this Mercury, like Mars square, the release of the Mercury Pluto trine, for example. Let me just play that one for you in a chromatic map. So here's like Virgo and Sagittarius in square to Leo and Sagittarius in trine. Tension and release. All right. Anyway, because the ascendant and the descendant axis rudder back and forth against the cardinal directions east and west each day, Sagittarius being just as south as it gets until you reach the Tropic of Capricorn. That's the furthest south the zodiac goes, hence the tropical zodiac. Tropical from Greek tropikos, which means turnaround. You see Sagittarius is like going on the great journey, and then Capricorn's like, hey, stop. Like back to the world, back to the tradition. There's rules and responsibilities, you see. So like where Sagittarius is rising here for Tom Waits is very much on this great adventure. But it's intriguing to see that there's kind of Saturn built into these late degrees of Sagittarius in the ways that I showed you before, in different divisions of the zodiac known as the bounds. And the faces, the last 10 degrees of Sagittarius are said to be the face of Saturn. It's, by the way, since the Golden Dawn tradition associated with the 10 of Wands in the minor arcana of the Tarot. So maybe have a peek. The first 10 degrees of Aquarius, where we find this Venus-Jupiter conjunction at the time of Tom Waits becoming, in that same system, are associated with the with the 5 of Swords, which some call science. Is that true? No, I think the 6 of Swords was called science. Anyway, as you can see, this isn't a part of the science that I have a great hold on. But if you do, maybe contemplate the 10 of Wands and the 5 of Swordsness that is also Tom Waits. Because the ascendant is called the rudder, and again, this is, I'm sure, an astronomical thing. The ascendant-descendant axis rudder back and forth against the cardinal directions each day. Sagittarius just as far south as it gets. Sagittarius rudder would suggest that Jupiter is the steersman of this native's boat, the boat of the soul. Learning to Sagittarius, I like to say what was rising when you rose is rising within you. And so for Tom Waits and other folks born with Sagittarius on the rise, learning to Sagittarius, learning to seek, learning to explore, learning to take the long trip, learning truth and setting sights for this. And probably the new Sagittarius that I think Tom Waits is here to find to help Sagittarius itself grow will look a little different than what the Sun has to say Sagittarius is today, or Mercury as well. Who's to say? Anyway, because Sagittarius ascension, Jupiter is said to be the steersman here. And Jupiter in Aquarius, and especially for me, like in the third whole sign, certainly seems to really resonate. Because the third is our tools, including our expression. Aquarius, again, kind of out of the box. Jupiter, big, right? So like exploring, questioning, expressing weird things in a big and beautiful way are going to be part of the journey. But what about in the second of like values? With Capricorn on the second, I might look to what Saturn's up to here in the 9th house journey, but in the 10th of kind of whole sign of legend, right? But what are my values around that? Something here about showing like avant-garde, out of the box, Aquarian, revolutionary, art and beauty and I'm like, is very important to me, and that's going to show up in my works, right? We also see Venus here in the second house, third whole sign at Jupiter's side in Aquarius is the guidance of this Libra sign that was culminating when Tom Waits was born. So no doubt, Mars or Saturn were the highest planet above the ground. Actually, I want to show you this. Let's go to Sonoma, California, where Tom Waits was born. You won't let me? Let's go nearby in Los Angeles. And the year was 49, December 7th at 7:25 a.m. 12 signs and 7 planets, y'all. All right, so Tom Waits here, born shortly after sunrise. Right? Why do we call the 12th house hidden things? Because the sun rises to illuminate the earth, but when he does, he hides the heavens. By day, we can only see one star. Unless we play with softwares like this, which will also help us to see that ruddering I described before. Tom Waits' ascendant here in Sagittarius, very far south of east. Where again, the Tropic of Capricorn here shown in Stellarium astronomy software with that Capricorn glyph, right? This is where the zodiac, the ecliptic, the path of the sun, the heart of the zodiac is most south of the equator. The equator is always east, west, but Capricorn sets greatest distance south of east and sets greatest distance south of west. It is south. It's the Tropic of Capricorn. It's as far south as the zodiac gets from the equator. It's astronomy, y'all. It's Earth astronomy. It's not about constellations, though I am intrigued by the truth that the heart of our galaxy was rising when Tom Waits rose. You just wouldn't be able to see that. The sun had risen, yeah? Anyway, let me show you this truth that because the rudder is there, while always in Sonoma, California, what is due south is culminating. Fascinatingly, there's a star here. There's a star here called Porama, the waist of the priestess, which is a star that's long been associated with prophecy. I kind of see the Cassandra myths there, like you have the prophetic gift, but nobody believes you. Maybe that's part of Tom Waits' career or something. But what I want to show you is while that degree is what is culminating and therefore reaching or associated with midlife. Why? Because the meridian, the north-south great circle, divides the eastern sky, which ups, from the western sky, which downs. All right, you end up getting these 4 quadrants, the stuff above the ground that's going up, like the sun when Tom Waits was born. Here's some hours after his birth, you see. This quadrant is above the ground but going down. This quadrant is below the ground and going down, right? Let me rewind to before Tom Waits. Now we have the sun in the first quadrant, which is below the ground, coming up, and therefore the first to rise. Here's the sun in the first house, first to rise. Here at the time of Tom Waits' birth, already has, if I dim the lights, we'll see again, Mercury about to rise there. The messenger, who's speaking for hundreds of billions of stars in that galactic core. All right, anyway, there's 2 places that I'm very focused on personally for career. One is what is culminating, what is reaching its height, and then it will go down. And again, Porama, waist of the priestess, tropical Libra. And tropical Libra associated with Venus. So that brings me back to this amazing Venus-Jupiter connection here in the second house or the third sign. We'll look to that in the chart a bit, okay? But I would just want to say this, while many astrologers will teach you that the midheaven is directly above your head, they don't know it, but that's fucking a lie. That is wrong. It's not even the part of the zodiac in any given moment that's closest to the top of the sky, unless 0 Aries or 0 Libra are rising in the moment that you're considering. I have to turn my shoulders here away from Earth's direction of east and west and looking south at the northern hemisphere midheaven. Let me zoom in so this is a little bit more like our experience of the sky. I got to turn my shoulders. So now that when I look over my left shoulder, I'm seeing this direction, which for Sagittarius is south of east, and seeing over my right shoulder this direction, Gemini setting north of east. All right. And when I align myself like that to like the Tom Waits directions, south of east, or let me say right of east, north of west, or right of west, and I'm also looking right of south, which, by the way, on the chart is why you see the midheaven leaning over here towards the left. And I'm focused now at the rainbow between the ascendant and descendant, the top of the curve, which is right where Saturn and Mars are side by side. This, though it is also not the zenith, that point directly above my head, it is the part of the ecliptic or the zodiac, heart of the zodiac, the sun's path that's closest to the top of the sky. So some, like Frank Clifford, who collected Tom Waits' birth information, thank you, Frank, call it the zenith. Another name for this point is the non-adjustable. It's like boring and lame, but it just means 90 degrees. Because the top of the ecliptic, the highest part of the ecliptic, which astrologers sadly improperly profess of the MC, the midheaven degree, is always square 90 degrees, non-adjustable, the ascendant. So with 23 and a quarter, Sag rising, it's 23 and a quarter Virgo here. And so I would assume Mars is the highest altitude planet, competing with Saturn. They're both very close, but indeed Mars is the highest planet. That could change. I can't necessarily see it in the chart based upon the planet's celestial latitude, how far north or south of the ecliptic they are, right? And so Mars indeed is the highest planet above the ground. The sun is certainly the most visible planet, the only one. Actually, sorry, I can see this big, beautiful moon here in the northwest, about to set at the time of Tom Waits' birth. Clouds allowing December 7th, maybe a roll of loaded cloudy dice, but Sonoma, California, like more likely to be bright than otherwise. And regardless, like just because we can't see them doesn't mean they can't see us. Mars is on high, which totally makes sense because the dude is a pioneer. And he's a big, like, gruff voice, especially if you listen to the later stuff, which some of us, like myself, refer to as pirate Tom Waits. Like, go listen to Hoist That Flag. Super piratey Tom Waits, like super Marsy Tom Waits. Where do you get the Virgo in there? Where there's something very, like, sacred. I'm trying to think of, like, some Tom Waits roles in films, and I can't believe they're evading me right now because he's played some amazing legendary roles. You know what keeps coming in? It's not a role he played. It's the Kingfisher who was played by Robin Williams, right? I don't know why I feel that in kind of a Tom Waitsian way. So that's off, but maybe not entirely. I don't know. There is something I really feel in that kind of gruff Mars, but also like rooted into the tradition, right? So like as a jazzer, I'm called to Tom Waits because, you know, he's a jazzer. I mean, he brings in some of the great jazz musicians that many others won't have heard of outside of jazz circles to be in his band. Cats like, I don't know, Greg Cohen, Mark Ribot. I mean, the list is endless. Many of the greats have toured with Tom Waits because Tom Waits is the great. Dude's like the GOAT as far as I'm concerned. I love Tom Waits' music. All right, well, where do we find music in the chart? So many places. One of them would be in Neptune. Very poetic. So Neptune in the 10th is intriguing. The South Node in the 10th intrigues me. There's something ancient about Tom Waits, which I feel about Saturn on high too, but pioneering and doing it in a new way, Mars. We find the arts in Venus. Right, like look at the medieval tradition depicting the planets. Venus is the one that has the musical instrument or a painting or something, yeah? And so Libra is here. Okay, but importantly, as I described over here, Libra is not the high point of the chart. That's actually for Tom Waits in Virgo. So if you're into dispositorship, if you do that whole dispositorship thing, bro, and I do, Well, Libra is Venus's land. So what's up with her? Virgo is Mercury's land. So what's up with him? All right. So let's play those games. And that's going to bring me into some harmonics space. First, just like, all right, who teaches Libra? And the answer is Venus. What's she up to? Damn, she's hanging out with this big jovial dude and like exploring the strange and super big artistic ways. Hello, Tom Waits. Second house of values, meaning like, I don't know, I hear some Tim Learyan value in that. But it's like, go your own way, break the mold, do something new, right? But the third sign of like expressions, a big, beautiful voice. Yeah, and I'm butchering, but trying to sing at the beginning of this thing, like, let's put a new coat of paint on a broken old town. I think he says lonesome old town, but it feels to me like that. It's like, so things broken. Like, let's go paint this town blue, right? Like, let's bring it anew. But I love the Saturn in it too, right? He's like, you wear a dress, baby, I'll wear a tie. We'll laugh at that old bloodshot moon in that burgundy sky. Man, Tom Waits. So there's just something big and beautiful about this Venus. She is also, by the way, let's make sure we're doing our maths right, like 46 degrees from the sun. And that is right around the time of Venus's maximum elongation, the furthest that Venus gets from the sun. Let me show you this in this brilliant Stellarium astronomy software. Just touch Venus and I can show you her orbital path here in green. And you see how she's just at like the edge of it. It's like kind of like what I was saying about the late degrees of Sagittarius in a very different way. She's like pushing her boundaries in that regard. Well, Venus certainly not visible at the time of Tom Waits's birth. Not only has the sun risen, but Venus is not yet. We'd have to go somewhere on the other side of the world, as certainly Tom Waits has many, many times. I want to like look at Tom Waits in Japan, for example. In Japan, it was the middle of night when Tom Waits was born. Actually, I'm pointing to Korea, right? But let me see where the sun was setting, and that was happening here, like through Italy and down through Africa. And Venus is setting where way over here with Jupiter in like India. All right, so anywhere in between, you would have gotten an eye full of Venus. Let me just put Tom Waits like in Cairo and show you that and how powerful Venus is in this stage of her cycle. Just look, whoops, got carried away. Let's look west. Right, so here the sun has set, right? In that sense, kind of opposite side of the world from Sonoma, California. And I'll take the super size away from the planets, but it would have looked like this. By the way, it would have looked like this in California too, before Tom Waits was born the night before. Maybe mother was in labor then. In the first evening of his life after the sun set, this beautiful Venus-Jupiter, really strong conjunction, right? Conjunction in longitude, that's zodiac degree, where we project to the sun's path, not conjunct by latitude or declination. But there they are, like nearby and beautifully on display, right? So when Venus is this far from the sun, very high and bright as an evening star. And it's a time when Venus is at maximum elongation that the tradition would say Venus saturates the chart. And is she at maximum elongation? The way that I can show you this is not by like listening to the truth that the furthest Venus can get from the sun is 48 degrees. Here she's 46. She doesn't do that in every cycle. What I want to do is look at Venus's speed. For when Venus's speed matches the speed of the sun, that's the maximum distance that Venus will be from the sun in that particular cycle. When Tom Waits was born, the sun was moving 1 degree in 1 arc minute per day. Venus was moving, what do we have here? Venus was moving 51.5 degrees, so she's actually past her elongation, preparing to station retrograde. So I got to go back in time, and I will. And we'll just look at when Venus was traveling. I'm looking here, by the way, at like that 1 degree per day realm. It's like here-ish. So it was more like November 21st, a good 2 weeks plus before Tom Waits' birth, when Venus actually in that particular cycle achieved her maximum distance from the sun. Looks like about 47 degrees and change, right? But this is a very high and bright evening star, Venus. If I had more time, or if I was sitting with Tom and he was interested, we would go explore the Venus cycle to which he was born. I'm just going to show you a quick peek. So when Venus conjoined Sun behind the Sun before Tom Waits' birth, that was here in the sign of Aries. Rewinding further, before he was even a twinkle in his daddy's eye, Cancer, when Venus came along with Mercury between Earth and the Sun. So I call it a Cancer Aries cycle. It's very much about burning the apron of June Cleaver. If I project Venus onto the sacred feminine alone, and I should not. But it's a very powerful time in the Venus cycles. Wheels within wheels within wheels, yo. Anyway, so Venus is representing this midheaven degree, what is culminating one of the places that we look for career. And she's in Aquarius, and the whole sign third and the second, some of those things I mentioned before, this is going to help us help Tom find his expression, show what he's known for, guide his vocation, how he will make a loving, hopefully, not just make a living as Tom Waits has, and build his legend, right, his legacy. But also Virgo's on high, so what's up with Mercury? And Mercury's rising in Sagittarius, exiled, combust the sun, I guess mathematically just out of combustion, which the ancients saw in 8.5 degrees. This is 8 degrees and a little bit more than a half. Mercury's very much behind the sun when Tom Waits was born. Completely, for that reason, also invisible. Although, you know what? Let's play another thing. Where the sun had set in the southern hemisphere, I don't know if I could cast a chart for here, but in Stellarium, well, actually I can, thanks to Astrogold's amazement now. Watch, I can just pull over here and put a chart there. This sunset, Mercury above the horizon, most would say Mercury can't be seen when he's that close to the sun ever, anywhere, but there might be enough distance between these lines. Maybe not, and maybe here in southern Madagascar even more, or northern, because the sun had set and Mercury had not yet. So let's play in Stellarium, where I can also just kind of touch the map, and we'll see in this moment of Tom Waits' birth that maybe this trickster, this messenger, was visible at that time. And that just has to do with how Sagittarius sets in the southern hemisphere, up north of there, no way. But maybe where's that weird little island thing down here, was another potential space. No, it'd be closer to the equator would be the best bet for Tom Waits to catch the message of this evening star, Mercury. I don't know. I bet you he's been most places. No doubt Venus, Jupiter, completely visible, clouds allowing after sunset at the time in the place of his birth, or in the time of his birth in places where the sun had already set. All right, well, back to Panoma, and I think again Los Angeles is close. And back to the natal chart. So I look here at Mercury as significator of Virgo. I look at Mars and Saturn in the 10th whole sign as career indicators. I look at Venus as significator of Libra, what was culminating as career indicators. I look at Neptune in the 10th house, which is in the 11th whole sign. It's not rare in the northern hemisphere when Sagittarius rises. It's almost always paired with the Libra MC, so this is the MC in the 11th whole sign of the chart, and just count from Sag, and Libra's 11, or I can count backwards, Scorpio, Libra, 12, 11. All right, so with the midheaven in the 11th house, we want to work in teams, castes, bands, check. All right, the moon has a really strong connection to the midheaven through the square, so the moon's in on it. We want to do some kind of nurturing, but it's probably going to be weird. All right, and look, hey, Tom Waits' weird music, as I shared before, it like nurtured me in a very important time in my life. I'm sure I'm not alone in that way. And whether he intended to do that or not, I don't think the songs that healed me from Tom Waits healed me because, well, maybe. Go listen to Blue Valentine, you know, it's a sad heartbreak song. And we know that real sad, good heartbreak songs like help the broken heart. Thank you, Tom Waits. I know I'm not alone. All right. Anyway, so I'm also interested in distances from points. Well, knowing that the high point here is 2315, well, Mercury's just square to that point. 2315 Virgo, because he's rising. But what about Mercury's distance to the midheaven? Since Tom Waits is an orator, a singer, an actor, right? We feel the Mercury in that. All the way, we might also look to like the ruler of the third whole sign being Aquarius is Saturn, who's on high. If I was doing this from one of the traditional approaches. But what about this distance between Mercury and the midheaven? I'm not going to see it in this thing. Libra and Sagittarius are generally speaking sextile, and we get a bit of a sextile here from the midheaven to the sun. But I got to go into some new territory. Let's put the fives on the screen. Fifths of the wheel. A fifth of the 360 degrees of the zodiac is 72 degrees. Pointing to the wrong number because I did the wrong math. 360 degrees divided by 5, 72. That's called the fifth, quintile, right? That's about a quintile from this midheaven degree to that Mercury. Mercury, quintile midheaven with a degree and a half. By the way, we see Mercury in 10 decile, a tenth of the wheel with Venus, with Jupiter. By the way, this is going to show up in a fifth harmonic chart for Tom Waits. Oops. We're going to see in the fifth harmonic Mercury conjunct midheaven. Even midheaven conjunct ascendant, which is interesting. That's more of that time of day and when those angles are aligned. But what we also see here is Mercury opposite Venus, Jupiter. All right, that's in the natal chart expressed as this decile, tenth of the wheel between Mercury and Venus, Mercury and Jupiter, like what you see here. Also moon quintile Mars and Saturn. All right, let's see that in the fifth harmonic for Tom Waits. Moon, Saturn, and Mars. Coming actually projecting her quintile ray into the midpoint of those two. Well, should I say her quintile ray? I don't know. The way of the 7 ways is ancient astrology. Opposition, 2 trines, 2 squares, 2 sextiles. That's it. The quintiles don't exist. But in the harmonic series, and they sure do, the fifth harmonic brings the musical third. It's what makes the chord major and happy and triumphant. So we want some of that here too. How can this, like Mercury going to explore the weird, channel into this midheaven through the fifth harmonic, which tends to be very creative and playful. Certainly like Tom Waits is doing that in a very explorative way. Transformational way too. His voice has changed so many different times. And I like that the fifths bring moon into Mars and Saturn as well. There's like some edge in that. All right. Well, here's another question. Maybe this is the last question I'll ask here in exploring some harmonics with Tom Waits. There's a little button I can push here where I get to see things like, well, Tom Waits looks strange. Why do I say that? Because sevens are pretty odd. They're very Uranian. Well, look what happens when you try to divide a circle by 7. The computer doesn't break like it would if I divide by 0. But look, that 9 right there you see at the end of my calculator is an 857-142, 857-142, 857-142 until the cows come home, and they ain't coming home, right? It's not irrational. It's 360 over 7, but it is an endless thing, all right? It's out of the box. It's different, and that's why most of us associate sevens with strange, like accessing the world behind the world. Let me show you a 7th harmonic chart of Tom Waits's birth promise. And we're going to see things like, Uranus and Neptune come together. This is not the 7th harmonic. That is the 5th. I said 7. We're going to see things like Uranus and Neptune come together. All right, like we shouldn't be shocked by Venus and Jupiter because they're just conjunct in his natal chart. There's 0 sevenths or 7 sevenths of the wheel. There are 0 fifths or 5 fifths of the wheel. There are 3 thirds and 4 fourths. And then they're so close to one another. We have to get into really high harmonics for Venus and Jupiter start separating. They will be 7 times further apart in a 7th harmonic chart than they are in the 1st harmonic chart, which is the natal, which shows them 6 arc minutes away, right? So in the 7th, that 6 arc minutes becomes 42 arc minutes, is what you see here. Do you? That math seems wrong. Anyway, some of that's because I can't see arc seconds and stuff. So look at how Uranus and Neptune are together. The 7th harmonic reveals some cool things that we might not see in 7th harmonic aspects, like this triseptile, right? This is a 7th of the wheel. 3 of those is like 154 degrees. That's the distance between North Node and Saturn, or thereabouts. Saturn, triseptile, North Node. I mean, actually exact. Also, we get Uranus, Neptune in biseptile. 2 sevenths, which is about 103 degrees. Pluto in the midheaven separated by 1 seventh. Moon and Chiron 3 sevenths, right? So we get strong 7ths. Actually, if I loosen up my orbs a little bit, we'll probably see some more, like the Venus, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune. Aha. Yes. Let's look at the wheel with just 7s in here. And so now you see that it's kind of a thinner line because less exact. Venus, Uranus within 2 degrees. Venus, Neptune within 2 degrees. Jupiter, same thing, right? Because Jupiter and Venus are just side by side. Uranus and Neptune much tighter. Saturn, the node, exact, right? So are 2 degrees enough? Does it work? Well, some play this like this is a David Cochrane approach. Just use 16 degrees for the conjunction, and therefore in opposition, you divide that by 2, give it an orb of 8 degrees. If a square, divide 16 by 4, and that's going to be 4 degrees. If a quintile, divide 16 by 5, and that gives you 3.2 degrees of orb. If a trine, divide 16 by 3 and you get 5 and change, 5 1/3 degrees, like that. So a septile, 7s, if we're playing this game, divide that 16 by 7 and you get 2 and more than 1/4 of a degree. And so as you saw here, like all that stuff's within range. And by the way, that means in the 7th harmonic chart, we're going to see not only this Uranus and Neptune conjunct, Saturn and the node together. Who else had we seen? I forgot. Pluto in the midheaven. Chiron and the moon. But we also see Uranus, Neptune, Venus, and Jupiter all huddled together. And you'll see that even though it's pretty far away, Uranus and Jupiter here are within that 16 degrees. If we use that for a conjunction in harmonic charts, and I like that, then that's all in space. And so it's the seventh harmonic, which as far as I'm concerned, and by the way, David Cochran disagrees, but most of us see seven as just fucking weird. and for me, this is the reason. What happens when we try to divide a wheel by seven? It ain't happening. It's out there, y'all. And I've seen sevens express themselves in pretty weird ways. And Tom Waits has big seven. All these characters come together. Now, in a sense, I can see that in his natal chart with sevens like this. But I don't like, it's harder for me to see that this Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, and this Venus, Jupiter, Uranus means that they're all actually kind of together in their sevenness. Harder, not hard, because I've been doing this for some time. All right. In a harmonic chart, we tend to like sevens in the seven is intriguing. There'll be conjunctions in 49, which is like the out there of the out there. And I'm not going to go right there. Typically in a harmonic chart, we're going to look at your more traditional oppositions, trines, squares, and sextiles. And here we see, using the angles, and many don't, but I do. And the nodes, like a full-on mystic rectangle in the seventh, and also a kite and some other interesting, compelling shapes that suggest that the seven is strong for Tom Waits. Well, no shit, because Tom Waits is crazy weird, y'all. And awesomely so. Now, the 11s are also pretty weird. In 11s, we see strength like Venus, Pluto, Pluto, Mars to a lesser extent. Neptune, Moon, yes. The midheaven and the sun. Let me show you that one. Sun in bi undecile, 2 11ths with the midheaven. All right, well, look what happens when we divide the wheel by 11. It's like the 7. It doesn't give you a whole number. It's not irrational. This is 360 11ths. Okay, but like that 7, you get a repeating thing that will never end. 7 2 7 2 7 2 7 2, or maybe 2 7 2 7 2 7 2 7, right? Now my argument is that, well, this is also never ending. It's at least trying to comply. And that's actually behind part of why I describe the 11s, is taking the weirdness of the 7s, which access the messages of the world behind the world, that from behind the veil, and to then bring them back to the squares. So it's a rude way to say it, but I feel that the 11s help us bring the magic to the muggles. I typically see in astrologer charts strong 7s, which I see as access to the weird, and strong 11s, which is bringing the weird through languaging to, back to the quote unquote real world. The 11s are very much not real world, but I actually feel personally they have an intent to connect more with, the quote unquote real world, the square world, whatever we want to call it, the 3D, bro, more than 7s do. That 7s bring us out, 11s help us bring the out to the in, which is going to be, by the way, completely contrasting things that you'll hear many great astrologers who have been pursuing harmonics for some time say about 11s. I'm just checking in with Winter wrote that Tom Waits played Mr. Nick the Devil in the imagination of Dr. Parnassian. Right, totally. He was in the Cotton Club and on and on. All right, let me not get lost in the chat right now. Yeah, many will describe the 11 as the outsider. An example that's often employed is the chart of Colin Wilson, who wrote a book called The Outsider. Who was describing what it is to be an outsider. My argument is he wrote the fucking book. and describing what it is to be an outsider. Why would you care to describe that to anyone if you weren't trying to bring messages from the other worlds to this world? I don't know. Are you and I in this world? Anyway, but you feel what I'm saying, right? So for me, 7's the magic, 11 bringing the magic to the muggles. And it's strong in Tom Waits. And thanks, Winter, for correcting. It's the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Yeah, I've got to watch that again and check out Tom Waits' role in that film. All right, I'm just getting lost in your amazing comments, folks. Thanks for spending some time here live. By the way, I guess this is the moment where I should say, if you like the video, please like the video. Like, it helps inspire the thing, and it helps other people get their eyes on this. If you know you have friends that would benefit from this kind of weird way of astrologizing and they would be interested, please do share this with them. And you can support my work at geminibrett.com, where you can book a session with me. We can look at some of your harmonic things. Now, many astrologers, when tuning into harmonics, in a way get to a place where it's like, oh, this is the truth, and it replaces their astrology. I don't think I'm going to go there. I actually don't want to go there. I like the way that I do astrology. I like the idea of the steersman of the chart that I was into before. I think Aquarius Jupiter very much describes Tom Waits' Sagittarian path. Although Mercury rising, again, angular planets can just completely take over, and we can certainly feel the Mercurial and perhaps even the Sagittarius Mercury in Tom Waits in a huge way. It's what inspired me to take this look, and I wanted to do this together. Although when you came in, if you were here at the beginning, or should you review this in a time that I currently perceive to be the future, you will see a 13th harmonic chart on the screen. That was the one little piece of work I did yesterday that I want to pursue and show you why here today. Okay, but we see strong 11s. And so I like to utilize harmonics as an addition to the astrology I do. Weird Olive just wrote Down by Law. Yeah, that's a super cool role that Tom Waits plays in that film. Yeah, I'm gonna go watch these movies and see them in his chart. I look forward to doing. I really like doing that with films and with music. All right, let me put you all away. You're too interesting, and get back to this stuff, which hopefully is interesting too. I will say 11s are interesting. All right, let me just show you an 11th harmonic chart for Tom Waits' birth moment. We're going to see Moon, Neptune come together. We're going to see the Sun and the midheaven come together. We're going to see Venus and Pluto come together. Let's do that. All right, and he has strong 11s in the 11s, which is intriguing. That would take us all the way to the 121st harmonic, and we're not going there today, friends. But here is that Moon, Neptune, Sun, midheaven, Venus, Pluto. So of course that would be Venus, Jupiter, Pluto, right? So strong 11s. You also see things like, oh, Venus, Jupiter, trine Uranus. So a trine is a 3. And a 3 in an 11 chart will then be a conjunction in the 33rd, 3 times 11. All right, I'm going to play that game right now either. But it's cool to see some strong trines here, some strong squares as well. Don't think that harmonics are only strong when planets are gathered together like this. But certainly the conjunctions matter. And again, that's what got me here. I mean, there's other softwares I could use where I could just push buttons and they'll be like, Tom Waits is strong in these harmonics. I'm like, how far is Venus from this midheaven, y'all? And from a platic, whole plates, whole signs point of view, the answer is trine. Libra, Aquarius. Aquarius is the 5th of Libra. What does that mean? Well, look, the 5th is the child, right? It's also our creativity, passion, romance, and much more. I'll get back to that, but it's the child. So how is Aquarius the child of Libra? Well, Libra is on one level, partnership, relationship. What's the child of that? Community. Libra in a more Saturnian way, equality, justice, equal partnering, What's the child of equality? Equanimity. We're all equal, Aquarius. Okay? Okay, well, the fifth is the child, but that's only because the child is the creation of my passionate romantic risks. That's all fifth too. So I'm not looking at like, oh, there's a super strong fifth house going on here, which we would expect in an artist. I'm looking at the ruler of the midheaven is 5 signs away. And by the way, it totally works. The dude is an artist. He's a famous one. It's not only going to be found through a super powered fifth house. Do you feel me? Do you see that? All right. But, you know, a trine's a trine. It's 120 degrees. This ain't, right? It's less. How much less? Well, a trine from 1024 is 1024. 1024 minus 9 is 124. And then I have to subtract 12 minutes to get to 112, okay? So trine minus 9 minus 12 arc minutes. Trine, 120 degrees, minus 9, 111 degrees, minus 12 arc minutes, which is 12/60th of a degree, is 110.8. Okay, so that's the phase arc, ecliptic arc, between this specific midheaven degree and Venus, who's said to be the guide of that Libra sign. You follow? All right, well, how much of a zodiac is that? All right, so what I do is I divide the wheel by that, which you math nerds would know, is I can just divide that by 360 degrees and flip it for real. The inverse button. Something went miserably wrong. It's unfortunate. So let me go again. 120 minus 9 minus 12/60ths. 110.8. I'm just going to say 360 divided by 110.8. 3.249. Would you agree that that number is very close to 3.25? I think you will. Would you agree that 0.25 is 1/4? I think you will. And therefore, if I multiply this number by 4, I'm going to get a whole number back, which is the game I play. I call it taming this division. Okay, so I multiply this by 4 and I get 4/13. Okay, in other words, Venus is 4/13 of a zodiac from this midheaven. Let me show that to you in another way. What's a 13th of the wheel? 360 divided by 13. 27.69 degrees and change. Okay, well, what's 4 of those? And the answer is 110.7. Right? And where were we at with Tom Waits? 120 minus 9. So 111 minus a little bit, right? So this isn't exactly 4/13, but it's close. And we'll see that in a 13th harmonic chart. We'll see that Venus and Jupiter are going to be conjunct the midheaven in the 13th harmonic. There you go. Now you can ask, why the hell is the midheaven down there? It's a great question. We'd have to get really deep into harmonic stuff. I'm glad that I have like 12th harmonic aspects here, like more traditional aspects shown, because look at the strength of this kite in Tom Waits' 13th harmonic chart. All right, I got here trying to seek how far from the midheaven Venus is, and you can see how close. Closer than I thought. Anyway, super close. And Jupiter is there. Look at Venus and Jupiter a little further away, right? They're going to be 13 times further apart than they are in the first harmonic or the natal chart. Like the 13th harmonic magnifies this thing 13 times. But this Venus midheaven is a 13. All right, well, that's not a trine. A trine, right, is 1/3, 4/12. 4 signs. This is 4/13. Venus midheaven. Venus Jupiter midheaven. Venus Jupiter midheaven opposite Uranus. Venus, Jupiter, midheaven, trine a Sun, Mars conjunction in one direction and trine a Mercury, North Node, Moon thing in the other way, right? So we get this full on kite, or if we include the South Lunar Node as well, in this 13th harmonic chart, you get what we call the castle. It's just one sign, that being Sagittarius, interestingly shy of the grand hextile or grand sextile, grand hexagon. Siegel of Solomon, Star of David, whatever you want to call it. It's a very powerful chart. In other words, Tom Waits is super strong in 13. Not only that, right, but look in another place, and it's on the squares, especially with Chiron. But look, the 13th also brings Saturn and Neptune together. Just show you the math behind that one too, in case you want to do this at home. Saturn and Neptune, how far apart are they? 30 degrees. A whole sign in conjunct. And yet they're not, right? So what are they? If I add 30 to Saturn, I get to 1858 Libra. All right, well, from there, I've got to subtract 2 to get to 1658 Libra. Then I have to subtract 7 arc minutes. So what is 30? The sign minus 2 degrees minus 7 arc minutes. So 28 minus 7 over 60. And the answer is 27.88. All right, well, what's a 13th of the wheel? And 27.69, pretty damn close to 27.88, which is why we see such a strong conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in the 13th harmonic chart. They might not be as close as you would imagine they would be after we just did that little calculator play. Well, look, this distance here, which is 2 and 2.33 degrees. Just like in a third harmonic chart, 13th harmonic chart, we divide that by 13, and that means they're within like 0.2 degrees of a perfect 13th. Well, there's no such thing as a perfect 13th, okay? So you can't divide the wheel by 7 to get an equal number. You can never draw a perfect regular 7-pointed star like you can draw a regular hexagon or a regular pentacle. 6 and 5 respectively, or an equilateral triangle of 3, or square, or equilateral rectangle, right? 4s. You can't do it with 7. You can do it with 8. Those are 45 degrees, the octile. You can do it with 9. Those are 40 degrees, the novile. You can do it with 10. 360 over 10, 36 degrees, right? The decile, decagon, 10-sided structure. You can't do it with 11, 360 over 11, as we saw before. It's this weird thing. And it's weird. 7 is weird. Tom Waits is weird. Tom Waits has 7 and 11. Tom Waits is weird and I love him. All right, I'm kind of weird. I got 7s and 11s too, and some 13s as well, in a very important place in my chart. So 12, 360 over 12, you better know that 30 degrees a fucking sign, all right? That's the fabric. And my friends, creation creates in 12s. You can certainly draw a perfect dodecagram, dodecile, 12-pointed star and whatnot. But more interestingly, the 2 6s, the seed of life. Creation creates in 12s. What is 13 then? So again, 7 cannot divide the wheel equally, neither can 11, 13 being the next one that in that sense is out. Well, what about 14? 14's a 7. 7 and 2, it's the octave of 7. The same thing as 7. What about 15? Yes, you can divide the wheel by 15. If you can divide it by 5 and 3, you can divide it by 15. 24 degrees is a 15th of the wheel. It's a very powerful division, actually. I'm finding more and more so, and very artistic, and it's kind of like the spirit of art. It's big in Coltrane. But 13 is big in that Tom Waits. So let's look again, get that calculator out, kids, and divide the wheel by 13. And you get this strange thing, right? 27.6923076923076923076923076923 forever. All right, well, so what? What can we do with these things? What does 13 mean? I can go to some books. The Spirit of Numbers by David Hamblin, I think, has a very interesting expression of 13. He just looks at famous people charts with lots of 13. He starts, by the way, in that chapter on 13, which is chapter 11 in the Spirit of Numbers, with Catherine the Great. Gets into some Amelia Earhart, Peter Sellers, Truman Capote, Herman Hesse, Janis Joplin, Che, Roberta Cowell, who I read here was the first man, perhaps, certainly the first Englishman to undergo a sex change. Robert Cowell became Roberta Cowell. That was in, do we have the date? I don't see it. He says he feels that a central question for 13ness people is, who am I? Tom Waits has this great song. It's like, what are you building in there? I gotta go listen to that one. I don't know what it's called. Let me see if I can find that to refer you to it. Tom Waits, what are you building? What's he building? It's called. You can find that in this place. What's he building? Let's read the what's he building lyrics. What's he building in there? The hell is he building in there? He has subscriptions to those magazines. He never waves when he goes by. He's hiding something from the rest of us. He's all to himself. I think I know why. He took down the tire swing from the pepper tree. He has no children of his own, you see. He has no dog. He has no friends. And his lawn is dying. And what about all those packages he sends? What's he building in there with that hook light on the stairs? What's he building in there? I tell you one thing, he's not building a playhouse for the children. What's he building in there? Now, what's that sound from underneath the door? He's pounding nails into a hardwood floor, and I swear to God, I heard someone moaning low, and I keep seeing the blue light of a TV show. He has a router and a table saw, and you won't believe with what Mr. Stitchaw saw, and he goes on and on. What's he building in there? I mean, a question that every mystic must ask about themselves. And, you know, I think we heard that kind of outsider thing in that tale, the 11, right? Is he singing about himself? What's he building in there? Tom Waits, what the fuck are you building? You know? Somebody wrote, it sounds Shel Silverstein. That's fun, right? So maybe we could go look at Shel Silverstein and see if there's a correspondence between their charts, right? So the big question is, what's the feel for the 13th resonance? Let me read another place. This is from David Cochran's paper you can find for free online called The First 32 Harmonics of Qualitative Research. He starts by sharing what some others have said about the 13th, including John Addy, who's kind of like the pioneer of Western harmonic astrology, very recent here, like kind of in Tom Waits' time. 13th harmonic is the one amongst the 12 and suggests lordship, says Addy. I call bullshit. Sorry. Love Addy's work. I think this is a complete miss, though. Why? Because, the one amongst the 13th is the center. That's 12. That's what this whole 13th zodiac sign thing is completely missing. It's absurd. Although I will say my triskaidekaphobia is not strong. I love 13. But my fear of the 13th astrology sign, folks who have just lost the way, they've never swept a circle with a compass in their lives. They haven't learned what the music does when you move the insides and go through the harmonic series. And we could keep going. If I could go to 13, by the way, well, you'd get to an interesting note called the minor sixth. And let me get back to this. So 13 being the one amongst 12, that's 12. That's the sun traveling through the signs. That's you on earth in the midst of them all, or perhaps surrounding them, because I believe the signs do not come to us from space, but rather emanate from the heart of earth outwards. And it looks a little something like that, and sounds like fallen astro dice, which just reveal 8, death. Some people associate 13 with death because they're kind of connecting it into like tarot play, where 13 once was the nameless card. Interestingly, do you know this? The Fool didn't have a number. He goes everywhere. The Magician actually begins the deck. And the Death card didn't have a name. But it's pretty clear what it was always, right? Skeletons and reapers and such. So some would just be like, 13, borrowing from another tradition, it's death, rebirth. So let me continue to read from David Cochran's paper here. Put it on the screen for you. On 13, it seems to have a similar effect to the sign of Scorpio. They both relate to death and rebirth, transformation, as well as group resources and values. That from maybe Bob Marks, maybe Tracy. I think that's probably Bob Marks. Right, you see there, that's just like 70s astrology. 8th house equals Scorpio, therefore Scorpio equals death. And 13 is the death card of the tarot. They're all the same thing. That doesn't make it wrong. I'm just trying to show what I imagine these cats are coming from when they say that. All right. Here's another one. The 13th harmonic indicates a sense of mission and purpose, a feeling that one must achieve something great or unique. The 114th aspect indicates giving up what one has completed in order to move on to the next cycle of activity. That's from Godfrey. Is it Charles Godfrey? Sorry to say I'm forgetting his first name. It's a bunch of other books on the shelves. They're going to have other opinions. Interestingly, here in Cochran's paper, he doesn't say anything of what he feels the 13th is. Usually the last thing that's written is like him. And it's interesting too that it ends 13 with 14. But let's even be there. Godfrey's saying that 13th is the sense of mission and purpose, which I'm sure Tom Waits has. The 114th indicates giving up what one has completed in order to move on to the next cycle. So 14 is 14. Like that should be down here under the 14th harmonic bit. So interesting to show it there. But what's he saying? If 14th is giving up on the end of the last cycle and starting the next one, he's saying cycles are actually in 13s. You know, interesting, you see that in the Maya work, or the Mesoamerican, I should say, to use a very modern term of ancient calendar keepers from a very rich and powerful sacred time tradition. If you've studied things like the Tzolk'in, to use the Yucatec language to describe the sacred count of 260 days, it's 13 and 20. And the numbers go 1 to 13 and then start again. And then there's 20 Nawels, or some call them like day signs. Like I was born 3 Deer, 3 Manik, or 3 Kesh. And then comes 4 Star, 4 Lamat. And there is no 14, right? At 14, you go back to 1. And so the 13 and the 20 make 260, a 260 day sacred count, right? So there's an interesting thing. And maybe some have studied some of their Maya magics in their Mesoamerican time and think of 13 as an ending. So there's other traditions that'll say something about it there. 13, like some associate with the goddess. Some will say that there's 13 moons in a year. There's not. There's 12.37 if you're into phases, or there's 13.37 if you're into orbits by moon. Anyway, neither of those are exactly 13. And there's something about 13 that's out of the box. Where 13 does play with the moon is the moon's average travel is 13 degrees per day. Actually, 13 and a third, which is why the nakshatras, the way that most calculate them, are 13 and a third degrees of ecliptic space, a 27th of the zodiac, right? So the lunar mansions, different traditions, different ways to pet the cosmic cat. Some do the calculations different, but the average travel of the moon, and she doesn't travel average. All orbits are ellipses, not circles. So sometimes the moon is fast, sometimes the moon is slow. Sometimes, like less than 12 degrees per day, sometimes more than 15. But the average 13. 13 and a third, 1/3 kind of looks like 13, right? So we get that with the moon for sure. If you've studied your Venus star, the 5-pointed star, which is drawn in Earth's zodiac every 8 Earth years, which are 13 Venus years. And there typically are 13 cycles in one of Earth's signs before the whole Venus star, this 5-pointed structure of love, retrogrades into the previous sign. So the 13 cycles. That's why I call my Venus work the 13th flower. So 13, there's something about 13 in the goddess. Actually, I've been taught that Friday the 13th, Friday being Venus's day and 13 being a number of the goddess, maybe for some of the reasons just described astronomically, but not for the reasons many teach. That Friday the 13th was a time to just lock the doors and make love and honor the goddess in that way, and something about the 13 being this goddess number. I was speaking earlier today about the 12th divisions and how this Gregorian thing of alternating between months of 31 and 30 days is actually not completely disharmonic and disconnected from nature. It is disconnected from the moon. This is a solar calendar. Well, so is the tropical zodiac, right? Equal 12 divisions of space. Not of time, because Earth's orbit is an ellipse too, right? So sometimes sun is fast, sometimes sun is slow, but the average time for the sun through a sign, a 12th part of Earth's crystal, is 30.44 days, right between that 30 and 31, you see? 12 is very harmonic. It's very natural. If you cut a pizza, you're going to cut it in halves and halves of halves of halves of halves of halves, right? So you get 1, 2 halves, quarters, eighths, 16ths, 32nd. If everybody's on a diet, you invited too many people to the party, whatever. The binary sequence. But when you want to make perfect divisions, you use your compass, and this is why all astrologers should study their sacred geometry, and you do this, and this is why we see this everywhere in the world, and this is how the zodiac is born. This is the seed of life. This is 7 by 6 around 1, which create 2 6s, or the 12. So where's the 13? Yes, it's the inside. And again, like for me, the 13 sign folks, they're really missing the boat. And when I hear Addie again talking about the 13th harmonic is the one amongst the 12, no, that's the 12, dude. That's the earth in our 12. That's Christ, the Son, traveling with the 12 apostles, 12 signs, the 12 tribes, and the other traditions. How about the 12 notes? I can't play them on that thing. How about this? 12 notes in an octave. People will say 13, by the way. But that 13, it's the same note as where you started from. It's the first note of the next octave. It's not the 13th, it's the first in the next range. It's the same thing. It's not 13, y'all, it's 12. Like the 13th month is the first month of the following year. Come on now. Let me read to you from some other sources. Here's Vibrational Astrology, The Essentials by David Cochran, who says this of the 13. 13 vibe, feeling of mission, a need to go to another level. All right. Maybe an update on David Cochran's work in the Vibrational Astrology Study Guide, Module 2, by the Association of Vibrational Astrologers. 13 vibration moves beyond average or mediocre. That's what I'm seeing. "13 vibration. energy, an inherent need to embody a special or exceptional essence that is deeply felt, going deep within, seeking to uncover that distinct essence. Has a drive to move beyond the average and mediocre, an inherent need to discover an exceptional essence that is deeply felt, and a willingness to work hard to find and connect with this essence. David always brings in this work hard stuff, like he calls sevens discipline. The argument is, if actually sevens, like most suggest, like myself, are just weird, you need a lot of discipline to stay grounded when you're starting to hear the spirits. You feel me? What about the feels? Like, I like that feels come in there. Maybe is that more in looking at 13 as a quote unquote lunar number, where 12 is solar? How much science can we do here? Like, I like when I was reading a Tom Waits lyrics, like somebody's like, sounds like Shel Silverstein. If that's true, let's go look at Shel. Do they connect in this way? Why did I start talking about what's he building in there? Because of 13, although I also heard 11, at least in what some say of the 11 as outsider. It's hard to say, and there's been very few who have done this research. Now, the Harmonics series of vibration is the truth behind this whole trip, and it can be heard. Again, let me just play this thing for you. Look at this, a flute from Peru. This won't sound too beautiful, y'all, but like the way the thing works is, if I don't cover any holes, it's a super high note because all the air is just coming out here. I start covering holes and the first one's there. That's the lowest note I could play, right? All of the notes closed, and now the air is moving all the way through. The whole reed is vibrating. Yeah? So watch, if I want to get higher notes from that lowest one, I just start lifting fingers. Octave. Why do we call it octave? Because it's the 8th scale tone. I can show you that here too. But that 8th scale tone, we don't call 8. We call it 1 in music. It's just where we started from, but the next octave up in the next range. And by the way, it also, I think, provides an argument for maybe we can't do harmonic astrology based upon the harmonic series of music. I mean, truly the zodiac is a wave like this. And so, yes, we should. But the issue is, half of the wave is the opposition. And musically, that's the most consonant relationship between notes. Compare that to this. The second most consonant or settled or resolved is the 5th. Or let me play the 5th. I need more hands up here. That's the 3rd harmonic. See, every vibrating thing is actually composed of vibrations on top of vibrations on top of vibrations. You're hearing this whole flute vibrate. You're hearing a wave that's doing that. But you're also, on top of that, and I mean in pitch, hearing a wave that's only doing half of the thing. And that's the octave. You're hearing a wave that's doing 1/3 of the thing. And that's the 5th, musical 5th. Do you see how this distance is like 2/3 of this distance? 5th. The 5th is a 2 to 3 relationship, and it's born in the 3rd harmonic. Let me show you a picture of these waves, thanks to Wikipedia. Here. Now, they shouldn't all be the same amplitudes. That's the height of them. But anyway, this would be like the whole thing, the 1st harmonic. Cut it in half, and you get the octaves. Cut it in 1/3. Get the 3rd harmonic. Let me play that for you on the flute. And here, instead of me lifting fingers, I'm just going to change within. to change the without. That's the second harmonic. That's the octave. Or they're not exactly in tune, and that just has to do a little something with this flute. Sorry. But let me play the third harmonic for you. All right, the third harmonic brings the musical fifth. Now, again, if the octave is the second harmonic, and the octave of the octave is the fourth harmonic, and these are all very consonant, it doesn't really seem to work with like astrological aspect theory, because we should expect the opposition, which would be the second harmonic, through this wave approach, to therefore, because the opposition is tense and dissonant, we shouldn't expect it to be the most consonant relationship of notes. So I just want to put that out there, because maybe this isn't an approach that works. However, if it did, and it's something I've been using, and in ways it's very interesting and kind of works, then I can look to where is the harmonic in scale tones to describe something about it. All right. So the octave is the second harmonic, the musical fifth above that, the third. The second octave is the fourth harmonic, just the half of the half. The eighth would be an octave, the 16th an octave, the 32nd an octave, right? The 64th, 128th, 256th, it's just the doubling sequence. But when we start getting odd numbers, things start shifting. So the third harmonic brings a musical fifth, the fifth harmonic brings a musical third. The seventh harmonic brings the dominant seventh. And so some of you are just like, what are you talking about at this point? I hear you. Importantly, just look at these numbers above. So in music these days, we're doing a thing called equal temperament. I don't have time to get into the beauty and the challenges of that, the blessing and the curse of that. But what these notes show me is that in the natural frequencies of the harmonic series, like this just being 1/7 of a vibrating string, we produce a note that is, in this case, 31 cents off, or 31 cents flat, or is quote unquote out of tune with the natural harmonic series in regards to like the piano key. And look at the ones that are most out: 7, 11, 13. So first of all, like that kind of works. And the reason is perhaps you can't divide a circle by 7 or by 11 or by 13. I love that the 11th is super flat. That's the negative sign here. And the 13th is super sharp. So this, this is the A flat in the key of C. It's the flat sixth, which is a really beautiful sound. But it's also not at all. Depending on your definition, which has to do with temperaments and other things, like this is already too far out there, but this is a way that like I'm also attempting personally to derive delineations for these harmonic numbers, because like I want to trust my elders. No, I want to read my elders, but I'm like too Aquarian for that, to Uranian, I guess I should better say. So I got to ask why. Now, typically I go and look and find things that basically they just already told me were the truth in the first place, but then I found it for me. I see Sarah writing, I've been studying Pythagoras and the music of the spheres stuff lately, and just learned today, I learned of his philosophy that 3's always a remainder. Oh, there's always a remainder. The 13th sign concept feels like a remainder kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. The only place where the 13th sign thing, in my opinion, would in any way to do with Pythagoras anything, is like in that kind of outsider essence that your remainder, like look into the Pythagorean comma in music. Okay. Like you have to go through 12, not 13 fifths to get back to the note where you started. But when you get there, it's going to be in like a spiral. It's not going to be an exact doubling of that first. And that's like really hard to describe. But just go research, and everyone, I suggest you do the Pythagorean comma. You'll get to learn a bunch of this stuff. In my opinion, the 13th sign is what happens when astrologers do not learn astronomy, geometry, and harmony. And fascinatingly, their whole argument is about astronomy, but they're so far wrong. And they're also speaking of just historical inaccuracies. People will say, oh, the Babylonians honored the 13th. No, they didn't, you ridiculous. No, there were 18. Anyway, I'm very triggered by it. I do not have triskaidekaphobia. I love 13, but I have a really deep fear of what's happening in this 13th sign thing. It just sadly is, it, in my opinion, it's what happens when astrologers try to learn this craft without learning that which is beneath, which is number itself, number in time, frequency, harmony, number in space, geometry, number in time and space, astronomy, and it has to do with that. Anyway, so why? 13's edgy. It's not an even division. It's sharp. The minor 6, by the way, I'll play a few here. It's actually a major third that way. But that note, it's like I can't play it on this fixed note equal temperament instrument. I just can't do it. On a guitar, like we could bend the string a bit. On the violin or something fretless, we could move our finger a little bit, like we could get there. If I had the ability to get to the 13th harmonic on this thing, I don't think you and I could actually even hear it. This thing starts at a pretty high frequency. The dog would probably come running and barking. She might anyway. You know, but it's way up there. And basically what we're looking at is comparing 13 and 8, because 8 is the octave beneath that, or 13 and 16 an octave above that, and like looking at that relationship of frequency. If I wanted to approach this through the musical harmonic series, which I'm fascinated by and I'm very interested, I think there's something to it. But as I said before, if that was the way, we're going to have to make an adjustment, because it would suggest that oppositions and squares are like really consonant and easy and resolved. And I could try to like talk circles into why that may be. So a great way to study 13 is go listen to some Tom Waits, because as we saw in Tom Waits's 13th harmonic chart, he is super strong in the 13. Again, don't only look for conjunctions. Remember, why did I get here? I literally calculated how far Venus was from the midheaven in Tom Waits's birth moment, and the answer is 4/13 of the circle. The harmonic chart showed me that Saturn and Neptune are separated by 1/13 of the circle. And then I get to find all these other amazing things that I didn't otherwise see or calculate. It's one of the gift of harmonic astrology, especially since I don't have a button in this particular software, Astro Gold software, to show me 13ths of a wheel. Well, Sun and Mars are in 13. Moon and Mercury are in 13. Mercury in the node in serious ways. Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Jupiter are in 13 and 18 and all the things, because they're just conjunct. So they're 13/13ths of a circle. But look, they're in a 13 relationship with Uranus. That opposition, however, which is a 2 and a 13, is going to show them to be conjunct in the 26th, which is a harmonic near and dear to my heart, because it's near and dear to my home, and tale for another time. But here's that now Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Uranus, tying them all to the midheaven. And we better find, Uranus in the midheaven. And by the way, most of us look at 26 because it's not prime, it's 13 and 2 of doing 13 with other people, as Tom Waits often does, because he has a lot of folks in the band or casts on the stage, right? So what is doing 13? It's doing Tom Waits. Now, we never want to use just one chart to do this. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at. We don't get to read what Ptolemy had to say, or even Kepler, who did play with 5s, but certainly not with 13s. He didn't even do 9s and 11s or 7s. Like, this whole thing's new. You can look back into Vedic astrology and divisional charts, and they have great harmonics like the Nimvamsha, the 9th division, but most of their divisions are not harmonics. So we just don't have much history to lean upon. Like, what can you do? You have to look at charts, typically of people you don't know, and ask, well, what about this? Or you might look at your own. So let me just finish by showing you why, for me, as I said before, 13 is a really important number. I'm not like super strong in the 13 like Tom Waits, but why I get here is I'm interested in this distance between Mercury and Venus. Why? I'm Gemini rising, Mercury's my steersman. He lives in Venus's sign, but they're in conjunct. Well, Venus is in his sign. They're in a foreign exchange program. So what distance are they? Traditionally, they can't see each other at all. There's not an aspect between neighboring signs. So they're in conjunct 30 degrees by plate, but they're not, right? So they're 30. Look at Venus at 1503 and Mercury at 1239. They're 30 minus 2, which would take me to 1303 minus 24. Yeah. So let's do that. 30 minus 3, let me go 30 minus 2 minus 24 sixtieths. And that's 27.6 degrees. Well, what's a 13th of the wheel? Again, 360 degrees divided by 13, 27.7. Okay, 13th harmonic of my birth moment. And you're going to see Mercury and Venus conjunct in the 13th harmonic chart for this reason. In 13th harmonic Pisces, which interests me now, I said it's not as strong as an harmonic for me, right? Like, you're not seeing that super strong kite like in Tom Waits' 13th harmonic chart. You do see in some interesting things, like Mercury conjunct Venus trine Sun. They'll all come together in a 3 trine times 13, 39th harmonic, by the way, which I would just get after by trying to play with, well, what's 13 and 3? And by the way, I think trine is the most confusing topic in astrology. I would say 13 is more confusing, but most people will never ask. I do. And Tom Waits can help. Maybe even some of my love for Tom Waits can help. Maybe I should look at my 13th harmonic in synastry with Tom Waits' 13th harmonic. And maybe I'll get some answers there. Oh, amazing. We share 13th harmonic ascendant. Is that a thing? Tom Waits' 13th harmonic Venus, Jupiter, midheaven at my 13th harmonic south node. And I will say again, Tom Waits, music, and especially The Heart of Saturday Night, like, it helped me out of a mess in my life. I mean, I would have made it out, I think, without it. But I have a lot of gratitude for Tom Waits for that reason. And Tom Waits can really help me settle into the beauty of music. He can really push me into, I can't even listen to that. It's way too much. What's he building in there? And maybe that's how my astrology works for you. If my astrology works for you, please do support the channel. Please like the video. Please share it around. Head over to GeminiBrett.com. Book a reading with me, and let's look at your harmonic aspect about the Lord of your midheaven, and its midheaven, like Tom Waits' is 4/13, suggesting that he should be weird and out of the box and edgy, and not settle in for that like easy to measure nonsense and that equal temperament. That 12th sign, normie shit. Give me the 13, Sign up for my mailing list. I am procrastinating right now because I'm meant to be writing up descriptions for a summit that I'm playing part of at the Turning of the Ages Mystery School coming soon. And to share some opportunities, connect on Earth, to gaze at the stars together, including the Conscious Life Expo in LA in February and the NORWAC Astrology Conference in Seattle in May. But also this Sunday, my dear friend Eric Deutsch and myself, who creates soul songs, well, Eric creates beautiful grand piano transmissions of birth charts based upon my astro harmony notes and symbolic scenes that I create based upon the nativities. Where, by the way, we don't use harmonics. We use a different thing, a chromatic map that I think actually much more powerfully resonates with aspect theory. Anyway, we're going to do some live soul song examples for people who win a raffle. Everyone will be there. I'm actually going to broadcast it right here on my YouTube page live. It's going to be 3 p.m. this Sunday, December 3rd, 2023. So you can see it there if you're free. I'll send a recording to folks who come and sign up through the Zoom link I'll be sending to my mailing list. So please head over to GeminiBrett.com. Hop on that mailing list and expect to mail sometime soon with a bunch of things, including a Zoom link, so you can join us live over in that place where I can also tend to the Q&A. What we're going to do is bring some people who are courageous enough to share their charts on the screen for all to see. And we are going to ask these people what are particular challenging parts of their chart. Then we're going to tune them into that challenge musically, that tension, and then show where it resolves. If I can get it together tomorrow and get some notes over to Eric, we're also going to listen to a song for the coming solstice. And there will be a raffle for people to win a soul song, to win a 12-minute-ish grand piano, beautiful transmission of their birth promise, or to gift that to someone else. 'Tis the season for gifts. This is a great gift. So we're also going to offer a significantly reduced price of the soul song work that we do, which is a very powerful thing. Let's not do astrology in the mind alone. Let's do it in the fields and do it in the hearts. And also let's sweep the compass. Thank you, Tom Waits, for helping us to tune into the 13 in what I'll say is a good way. Hopefully you've enjoyed your time.